Welcome to episode 609 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and three more big points for Hansi Flick and company. All the chaos on the field seems to not be bothering the new German manager because he has his team working well as they probably could with a shortened preseason with so many players missing and all of that. So three more big points for Barcelona in the early part of a season when Danny Camp was frustrated that he wasn't registered, that Barcelona is sending out players that they probably would like to keep for the future, but they've got to make FFP work. So with all the chaos and all the frustration of the last few days, even the show I did with Rory Barlow that came out midweek, we had a lot of frustration, a lot of negativity in that show, but all of that, and is the case with the good stuff, gets erased by bad stuff on the field. It's the same in the opposite, where the good stuff on the field can sometimes erase all the bad vibes off the field. And I think that is the case of what we saw today against Athletic Club, where Barcelona were clearly the better team. I do appreciate, for all the housekeeping before I get to the player ratings, but for housekeeping purposes, I do appreciate all of the different suggestions I got for the good, bad, and ugly that I will probably be shifting to this season. Or if people like these player ratings, they're a bit more work, but maybe I'll stick with that. We'll see what happens. I'm still trying to play around with replacing the 5 headlines, which I want to remind everybody, I'm going away from those because of all the work that they were. They just took a little bit longer than going from now the stream on Tifo, which, final piece of housekeeping, plugging Tuesday's show. That's Barcelona at Rayo Vallecano on Tuesday, 9:30 local time in Barcelona and 3:30 here in the Eastern United States. I appreciate everybody. It's Tifo. The description or the show notes will have the link to that, and it's promo code Hola Culés, but it's free to join. And over there, we're having a good conversation. You can request to be on the show if you're a patron or you've been on the podcast in the past. So if I know you and I trust that with the right microphone and camera, that you can come on and speak to me, that'll be a lot of fun. We've yet to have somebody outside of the first day. So I'm hoping that we get some more guests on there and have some more fun on the watch along. So again, I'm doing these watch alongs as the game is happening live. So you can join and chat with me there. And then I don't want to be too redundant with these 5 headlines and having to write everything and edit and all that. So I'm diving right into a post game afterwards. So you can even join me for that live, but I'd also prefer if you watch on YouTube or subscribe to the podcast apps, wherever you get your show. So without further ado, let's dive in. Here are the player ratings, beginning with Hansi Flick. He gets a 9 for me because in his second official match in charge for Barcelona, all of the things that are different with Hansi Flick's Barcelona from Xavi's team, to make those changes so quickly with so little time with some of your important players in the preseason. This is a testament to the fact that Flick had ideas and he had that time off. He watched a lot of Barcelona. He watched Barça Athletic, and he knew the players he would have at his disposal, even though he didn't truly know what happened in the transfer window. You know, he didn't get Nico Williams, whatever it was. Nico Williams playing on the other side for Athletic Club in this match. Barcelona seems to have really good ideas, what to do in the press, how to find and make those central combinations work to good effect. And there seems to be a clear intention with his team. All the different mini combinations, if anything, you'd hope they just get smoother as time goes on. Maybe teams will watch more film and get a little bit better in defending. But Hansi Flick's team, unlike Xavi's team, is not relying on individual excellence to get wins. It was Ousmane Dembélé. It was Lewandowski. At the back, it was Ronald Araujo. Then it became Lamine Yamal. Individual players under Xavi needed to have really great games for Barcelona to seemingly get points. And then when they didn't have control over a match, or when an individual player wasn't being individually brilliant or having an individual moment of complete, as I said, brilliance or inspiration, then that meant that Barcelona were going to have to defend like heck, defend for their lives, and limp over the line. But I think Hansi Flick, it's still early. The reason I give him as a 9 is because, he's going to have challenges. Teams are going to get more fitness. Teams are going to get more comfortable with each other. Teams are going to figure out what Hansi Flick's Barcelona is trying to do. And the level of teams is obviously going to get better come the Champions League and that new format and all that stuff. But still, the structure and the thing that he has built so far has been excellent. 9 for Hansi Flick. And this was supposed to be, at least on paper, in the Liga, a difficult opponent. So to get the 3 points, even at home, to get the 3 points of Athletic Club could pay dividends for this Liga title race come the end of the season. So really good stuff for Hansi Flick to throw a bunch of academy kids even out there. And by that, I mean a bunch. I mean Marc Bernal making his home debut. We'll get to him in a second, because let's start the player ratings with the individual players with Robert Lewandowski. Lewandowski gets a 7.5 for me. Not only did he have the game-winning goal, but he also hit 2 posts, and he had the one that was right at the keeper. So 3 really great chances. It wouldn't have been that crazy if he had scored 4 goals in this game due to the positions he was putting himself in. And I know people argue and see him give up those balls in the middle of the field, say that when the ball gets to him at his feet, that attacks break down, that his flick-ons weren't good enough. But I remind you, too, that when Robert Lewandowski does get those flick-ons to work in those central channels, when he drops in, Barcelona are in on goal. And their opportunities, or the percentage of goal scoring opportunity, whatever, expected goals, that's what I'm looking for. The XG, whenever Robert Lewandowski can get that ball out of his feet and flick it on the way he kept trying to in this game to Ferran Torres or Rafinha, it's a high probability that Barcelona, probably close to 30%, which is still really high, but it's a high probability that Barcelona is now in a 1v1 opportunity. Midway through the second half, Rafinha getting in behind, and while it was not an immediate red, it was still a yellow because Uri was in a position where, Rafinha was still in front of him. So it was an opportunity for Rafinha to get in behind. And if not pull down, Rafinha was in a good goal scoring opportunity. So Robert Lewandowski, I'm giving him a 7.5 because he not only had the game-winning goal, but he seems to fit this system much better than he fit Xavi's. He would have to go out to the wings so much more under Xavi, and maybe that will happen as the season goes on and teams do different things with him. But so far, he's just being in the central channel, being that guy who absorbs all the pressure and takes those 2 center backs, or takes their attention, I should say, away from the guys running through the channels in the middle and the half spaces and running in underneath him. So good job by Robert Lewandowski to be a system player here. Rafinha gets an 8.5 for me because he was excellent in this game. 3 key passes, didn't have an assist or a goal, but I don't really care because functionally he's so important to Hansi Flick's system. The 3 key passes, 4 of 6 on his crosses, 6 of 6 on the long balls, 3 big chances created, 3 for 5 on his dribbles, 9 of 13 on his ground duels. And maybe that last stat there is the most important to me of all. The 6 of 6 on the long balls is something. It means that I know that it looked like he gave the ball away a lot today. And where he's losing possession is kind of where he's supposed to lose possession. If he gets it right, then Barcelona, again, are in on goal. And if he doesn't, then you got to win the ball back, and you got to press, and you got to work hard. And every time he lost the ball, he fought like hell to get that ball back. So 9 of 13 on his ground duels tells you the excellence that he was. He was coming all the way back to Barcelona's own goal line, back into their own box. And I think a puzzling thing for Hansi Flick will be, do you keep him in the middle where he can defend probably in the best position of those players that could be in that number 10? He's a better defender than Dani Olmo, and he's a better defender than Ferran Torres. So do you keep him in that position, or do you move him out to the left wing and you kind of give Dani Olmo the keys of the castle in the 10 where he's going to be most comfortable? I think that's probably what happens, because if Barcelona are going to have between 60 and 70% of possession this year, which I do expect them to have that this season, again, under Hansi Flick. If you're going to have 60 to 70% of possession, then you do want to put Dani Olmo in his most dangerous spot. Ferran Torres gets a 6.5 for me. I think that the best of Ferran Torres is the idea of Ferran Torres, not necessarily the execution of him. It's that his ability to unlock space that the opponent leaves and that teammates are creating. And when he can either push into that space himself, dragging defenders around, and then vacating that space for somebody to come into, that is what he does best. And that does have a role in Hansi Flick's system. It feels like a novelty thing when he's not scoring goals or getting assists. And I don't think his whatever striker instincts he had while playing at the wing at Valencia, and then in that first season with Man City, I think those have kind of left him at this point. I think he's a different player as he ages. So I give him a 6.5 because I don't think he was a negative by any means. But clearly, I think if you upgrade that spot with, in theory, Dani Olmo, and then move Rafinha out to the wing, or have Dani Olmo on the left, I don't know what's going to happen. But I think once you upgrade that spot in the starting 11, you're going to see a bit more from that position, and Barcelona will be even more dangerous than what Ferran Torres provides you. But I wanted a 6.5 because I think it's just a very fair number for him. Lamine Yamal, next up. He was the man of the match because he scored the goal, and what a golazo it was. I'm glad they made sure that he got credit for that goal. Because it was goal bound, he got credit for the goal, which is important. And now already this season, he has a goal and an assist. Giving you the idea, and I'm not giving him an 8.5 because of the grade I think he'll get for the season, because he does have the possibility of getting 20 and 20, but just because he looked better even than he did against Valencia. With only a few days of training under Hansi Flick, The big concern going into this game for me, honestly, outside of Pedri and Marc Bernal being a double pivot, we'll talk about in a second, was that partnership between Lamine Yamal and Koundé. Even though they played together last season, in this system, Koundé has a lot of work to do to support Lamine Yamal, and Lamine Yamal is seeing less of the ball on the wings. He's seeing less of the ball to take on the opposition in 1v1 situations. So when he is on the ball, he's got to make the right decisions we know he has in his boots, but he's got to be a bit more clinical with his decision making. And Lamine Yamal is capable of, as I will say probably every match review, I'm as a broken record, Lamine Yamal's ceiling is who knows, because he is already a star, could be a superstar by the time he's 19 years old. Who knows where he is in those things? That's too quick. Let's not talk about his ceiling. But his floor in every match in the Liga is going to be high enough that he gives you something in every match. That's what makes him the star he is already. He's expected to do something, and he will in every match. And even in this match where I didn't think he had the best first half, and in the second half, Barcelona were focusing much more on their left wing. As Nico Williams, they were trying to take the ball kind of away from him, and he was also getting a bit tired there in the second half. Lamine Yamal, again, didn't have the best Lamine Yamal day that he could have, but he also had a goal that was a golazo in the game, and he did his job, and he was important, and he took on Leku, and the calls didn't really go his way today. The referee wasn't very kind to him. He got called for a foul when a guy flopped. He got called for not getting a foul when he went down maybe a little too easily, but he also was pushed down. So calls didn't go his way, and he could be even more dangerous. So I want to give him an 8.5. Maybe, okay, the goal game an 8.5. If not for the goal, I would have given him like a 7 and a 7.5, because I felt like I want to leave space for him to go up. I don't want to start him in 8.5 this season, and then by, the third month of the season, if he's got 8 and 7 or six goals and 9 assists or whatever it is by November, I want to have space to move up in his player ratings because of how good he arguably already is game in and game out. So 8.5 for Lamine Yamal. Pedri up next. He got an assist in the game, gets a 9.5 for me. He was my man of the match. The stats don't even tell the story. I've been giving you some of the stats when they do tell the story, like with Rafinha. But for Pedri, created 5 chances more than anybody else on the field. Great. 5 key passes, 87% on his passing, 63 touches. But again, that does not tell the story. His ball retention is essential in the center of the park for a team that is now combining a lot more in the middle of the park. I was worried when I saw the starting lineup. Marc Bernal and Pedri working together for the first time this season. Marc Castro had played the 90 minutes in the Gamper, played the 90 minutes against Valencia. Barcelona play on Tuesday again against Rayo Vallecano. Join me on Tifo for the watch along. So Castro getting rotated makes a ton of sense. And it means that Hansi Flick is already considering the next matches and already considering those when he made his opening lineup against Valencia, that he's planning for the long run, at least for the players he had at his disposal based on Pedri's health. But Pedri was excellent in this game. Again, ball retention was amazing. His deep lying playmaking, if he was better at that, you'd argue that he's one of the best in the world at that position. And it did this game answer a huge question for me. Maybe we'll see what happens when De Jong and Gabi come back and you kind of got to fit all of them in together. But Pedri can absolutely play as a pivot in the system because he is Barcelona's best controller. He's better than Gabi at that role. He's better than Frenkie de Jong at that role. He is the best player on the ball as a controller. He is not the best creator from a deep position that Barcelona have. I don't know if they really have one that I would consider as above average in that position. Maybe it is De Jong because of his ability to both play some long balls and drive into the space forward. So maybe it is De Jong is the best deep lying playmaker for Barcelona on paper. But Pedri as a controller is excellent, where I'm now kind of reconsidering maybe it's Gabi who moves into that 10 position in the 4-2-3-1 in the build-up, and it's Pedri who is the controller alongside De Jong. Can Hansi Flick in the system make all of that work? I'm not sure, but the fact that Pedri being so good in that spot and the fact that he played as the 10 for Spain in a similar system over the summer was good there. I've always been Team Pedri. I know that there are people, especially my YouTube comments. So shout out to you because there are people who do comment every video and I don't want to have people get negative on you. So I won't say certain names, but there are people in my YouTube comments that get on Pedri seemingly every chance they get. And I think they're going to have an even harder time this year getting on Pedri because he looks like he fits perfectly, excellently, like a glove in Hansi Flick's system. He gets a 9.5 for me. Marc Bernal, 83 minutes for him in his home debut, standing ovation. Very much like Lamine Yamal, I'm actually going to give him a 7.5. I know I gave Lamine Yamal an 8.5. I'm going to give Marc Bernal a 7.5. That might be too low, but let that rating let you know how high I am on this kid. I think he even has room to grow. I think he has room to even be better. I think if you judged him just on the first half, I would have given him maybe an 8.5 or an 8. But I think the second half was a little bit tough for him. He picked up the yellow. I think he struggled with the rest defense as his legs got a bit tired, but he was still so essential. I think Barcelona closed out the game really well due to him. From the 83rd minute, Barcelona could have been back on their heels. They could have let Athletic Club come back into the game, but the hard work of Marc Bernal did not allow it to happen. I think he played a few long balls that were better than what I saw for Bernal at times. I thought, as I said, he was excellent at times at Barça Athletic, but I need that more consistently from him. And he played a few of them. But if he can continue to play more of those this season, it's just going to open up so much for him. And if I'm Frankie de Jong, I'm looking around and I'm kind of worried. And if I'm Gabi coming back in November, I'm saying, great, I can take my time getting back because Marc Bernal can be a starter throughout La Liga. Can he be a starter in the Champions League? I'm not sure yet because of that inexperience. And you could argue some of the other youngsters like Pau Cubarsí, who we'll get to in a second here with Bernal. So 7.5, but if you put in the comments or if you hit me up on social media, if you're listening on the podcast apps, that he deserved an 8, no arguments for me. If you argue 8.5, again, barely an argument for me, but I want some room for him to improve. Marc Bernal, standing ovation on his home debut. I'm so excited. I said it on the podcast. I'll keep repeating it. And I think I'm going to keep repeating it because, hey, you never know when you get a new listener. Marc Bernal, Cubarsí, Lamine Yamal, all coming up at 17 in the last year. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for Barcelona even. It doesn't happen for any academy. And we could just prophesize and idolize what La Masia does, but it doesn't happen. This is so exciting. Awesome. And to have Balde and Gabi kind of in the same generation, Fermin Lopez, the same generation, Casado, the same generation, having them all in the first team at the same time, even though it's out of need, they didn't have to be this good. It didn't have to work out for Barcelona. Even if you need to have your academy kids step up, doesn't mean they will. And the fact that all of these are in the way that they are, it just simply continues to be mind-blowing. And having done this show for 7 years, I don't take it for granted. Having watched the academy for close to 20 years now, I don't take that for granted. This generation is special, and I will say that until I am blue in the face, or even a Barcelona blue in the face this season. Balde, I'm going to go with a 6.5, which feels low, but I also think he has room to improve in this system. He wasn't great last year. He was better 2 years ago, and I think he is still finding his way in Hansi Flick's system. So I don't think he ever, because of the injuries especially, and he went down to end the season, I don't think he ever really got it under Xavi in last season when the team wasn't doing well. I think he ebbs and flows as the team ebbs and flows. When the team looks amazing, Balde looks amazing. When they're struggling, he's struggling. And so I think that kind of fit the narrative today. So maybe he deserves a 7 over a 6.5, but I'm going 6.5 just because his crossing, I know it can be better. His cutbacks, I know can be better. In the second half, he looked much better, and that did look more purposeful. So actually, if I'm giving 2 half ratings to him, I would go maybe 5.5 in the first half. I didn't think he was very positive, but I give him almost an 8 in the second half because I think it was very purposeful for Barcelona to get that ball off the right wing. I know the idea would be, hey, we want Lamine Yamal on the ball as much as possible, but honestly, it was better for Barcelona to take Nico Williams off the ball and try to move the ball and have Rafinha shade to the left quite a bit more. And with Ferran Torres, those two working through the middle together, they had some really good moments together. I know I already talked about them, but really good combinations from them at moments in this game in central channels, Rafinha and Ferran Torres. And they were shading over to the left there because it does support both the left foot of Rafinha and Ferran Torres coming in off the left. So Balde in the second half, to start the second half, getting into that mix and having a bit more space and have a bit more time on the ball was advantageous for him in this game. So Balde, I give him a 6.5, but again, I could argue something a little bit higher, but let's give him room to grow this season. Inigo Martinez gets a 7 for me because he didn't do anything wrong, and Iñaki Williams didn't really do anything right in this game, didn't really look dangerous. Inigo Martinez, I should say, while dealing with Iñaki Williams, it could have been worse. And Hansi Flick has been high on him. He wasn't good against Valencia, much better against Athletic Club. So don't really have anything too positive or too negative. So that's why he gets a 7, because Barcelona won the game and he was solid, and Athletic Club only scored 1 goal and he really didn't have much to do with it. So you could also argue that he deserves a higher rating, but I'm going to go with a 7 for him because I don't think his long passing today was as clear and as concise as it could have been. I think he can get better with the ball at his feet. He had a few diagonals, but I think it could have been better from him with those line breaking passes today. And I expect him to be even better in that role throughout this first half of the season as Christensen and Araujo are gone until God knows when. Pau Barça, lowest rating, I think, for anybody, especially any of the starters at least. 6 for me. Gave up the penalty, got a yellow. It was a rough day at the office for Pau Barça. It's been a rough 3 months for him in comparison to the high standard he set. So if you're listening to the Barcelona podcast, you're likely a Barcelona fan. This is a safe space. I wouldn't say he was overhyped, but I would say that he exceeded all of our expectations when he was 16 and turning 17 as a first-team player. It's just like, you're not a center back at that age and that good that he was in the first 2-3 months of the season. And I think he has come back a bit to reality to what a 17-year-old center back should be. So he gets a 6 for me because it was not a completely terrible performance, especially they won the game. And he had to deal with Nico Williams, and he had to deal with Iñaki Williams, and he had to deal with Sunset coming from deep positions or deeper than those two. So he had a lot on his plate today in an attack that could be really dangerous in the Liga this season for a team that would like to be pushing for the Champions League spots in a Liga this season in Athletic Club. So it could have been worse. So I give him a 6 here, and that's kind of unwavering. I'm good with that. And if you want to say it's lower, go ahead. But anything lower than a 6 seems ridiculous when the opposition only scores 1 goal. And yes, the 1 goal was his fault, completely his fault on the PK, but he also could have done, there were worse things that he had moments where he won some goal kicks for Barcelona and he cut down space and he slid and he did all he needed to do with Iñaki Williams in the middle of the field. Koundé today gets a 7.5, not really for what he was doing on the ball. If he had been better on his crossing, if he, I think, had better chemistry or continuity with Lamine Yamal, because again, those guys only got about a week to work together. This was their first full week to work together in the preseason. And I know they played together as starters last season, but trying to figure it all out in Hansi Flick's system, that's a lot of thinking for Koundé to do. That's a lot of work for him to kind of work through when to make those overlapping runs in this system. Things are different for Koundé now. So for the attacking side of things, I probably would have given him like a 6.5, and that his attacking prowess today does kind of knock his overall rating down. But as far as a defender today, Koundé basically gets a 9. I mean, it was as perfect as it could be as an individual defender. He fell for 2 Nico Williams fakes, and one of them led to Nico Williams getting a shot off that fortunately Ter Stegen kind of had covered the whole way, and Nico didn't get enough on it. But as a Nico Williams defender boost, I'm going with 7.5 for Koundé, because let me read you Nico Williams stats. That's actually what I find to be more important than Koundé's stats. He was 0 for 5 on his crosses. He had 12 total passes, 0 long balls played, 50% on his dribble success, 0 shots on target, and he lost possession 19 times. Remember with Dembélé, we used to talk about Dembélé, that if he lost possession between 12 and 14 times, that was about fair. Anything over that, then it was a bit too much, and now you're counterproductive of your team. Nico Williams today lost the ball 19 times. So maybe people will argue that Nico Williams, is he really the answer for Barcelona on the left wing? I still think in the long run, yes, he's too young and too good not to be. But Koundé is making an argument, and has now for 2 seasons, to be the best defensive right back in the Liga. Actually, let me go on a limb. I think he's the best defensive right back in the Liga. And Dani Carvajal, still at his veteran age, what he does for Real Madrid in the attacking sense and what he still gives them defensively, it's hard to argue that he's not at the top of his game. And I'm forgetting some of the other best at their position. I guess Jesus Navas is quite long in the tooth, and there are other options around the Liga for really good right backs. But I think Koundé might be the best individual defensive right back that the Liga has to offer, not just this season, but last season as well. And he continued to kind of build that legacy against Nico Williams today. 7.5, lock it in. Ter Stegen gets a 6.5 for me. He was in the first half when Barcelona had a few shaky moments when they had to play back to their keeper. He was good on the ball. He had one where he had to chest it down and play it quickly. So with the ball at his feet and the stuff that we don't really care about because Barcelona are keeping possession near their own goal, we kind of forget those things. He was important there, and he was good on the save that he had to poke over. I mean, Atletico didn't really do too much to make him think today. And the one time he really did have to think was on the PK. He got caught, went the wrong way. So I guess I'm going 6.5 on Ter Stegen. He did his job, so maybe he's just like a flat 7 if that's what our base is. But I guess if our base is 6, then I gave him a 6.5. So I don't know. We can argue about goalkeepers because most of us aren't goalkeepers and we're goalkeepers. So if you were a goalkeeper, let me know what Ter Stegen's rating is. You have a better idea than me. Now for the subs, this is tough because again, they don't really have too much time to play. I thought Fermin Lopez looked a bit rusty. Looked like he didn't, 3 days with Hansi Flick. That's what it looked like to me. Looked like he wasn't totally comfortable coming over to the wing, interchanging with Rafinha. And I do expect them to work on that in training, and I expect that to get better. So Fermin Lopez gets a 6 for me because very much like the other guys who I said only have way to go is up. I think it's the same thing with Fermin Lopez. He was important defensively late in the game to press, gave some energy, and had a few good moments with Pedri, but I think that we can expect more from him. So a 6 for me. And then I'm giving Eric Garcia, Pau Victor, and Gerard Martin 7s, but really it's kind of not applicable for them because especially Pau Victor and Gerard Martin, they played so little of the game, but they came on. Barcelona looked like they were confident in finishing that game. They didn't look like they were going to concede. So they get a 7 for me, all three of them, just because, again, I feel like that's in a game that you win, the base number you give of a 7. So a base for those three. And how about this? You let me know what my rating was, what you give me for these player ratings. And also let me know from 1 to 10 how much you like these player ratings. Because, again, I will likely go back to a good, bad, ugly, or maybe depending on the match, I might switch it up a little bit. So we might do some good, bad, ugly, whatever I want to name that. I might have a Champions League match where I want to do a 5 headlines and really go long and deep on some big match review. And I also have these player ratings. Having these different options for the post-game stuff, I think, is hopefully going to lead to more exciting feedback and more interactive feedback from the audience. So speaking of that audience, if you want to be an active part of it, again, I remind you, you can support me and be an active part of it. $3 on Patreon. The benefit I can finally give you, patrons, is that if you have a mic and a camera and are confident to be on screen, then request to be a part of the broadcast on these watch-alongs. Remember, the next one is Barcelona at Rayo Vallecano, 9:30 local time in Barcelona, 3:30 here in the United States. That's p.m., so 3:30 p.m. here in the U.S., or 9:30 local time in Barcelona. Remember, you can join my watch-alongs if you're a Patreon for those $3, or if you're listening and were a former guest on the show, Frances Tomas, where you at? Was in when are those matches going to be early enough for you to come on? I know these are a bit too late for you, but I know you listen. And if anybody else who's a regular podcast listener who's been on the show before wants to come on, you absolutely can come on the show with a microphone and a camera. So again, I'm looking forward to have people on. So whether it's player ratings, good, bad, ugly, 5 headlines, whatever it is, I appreciate everybody being with me on the podcast apps or on the YouTube channel or on Patreon, on Discord, on the Facebook group, whatever it is. Subscribe on all those different places, including social media, to be a part of the Barcelona podcast community. I do appreciate everybody so much. And 6 points to start the year, as good as it gets. Can't ask for anything more from Hansi Flick and company. So let's continue on. Vamos with Barcelona this season. Visca el Barça. And of course, Forza Barça.